Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that Varsity Search is currently conducting a search for a 3 to 5 year litigation associate for a high-end litigation boutique that is Hedrick Kring in Dallas. This person would likely be at an AmLaw 100 firm right now or a comparable other boutique litigation firm and interested in working with several Big Four accounting firm clients on regulatory investigations and defense cases. So if you or someone you know might fit that description, be interested, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. All right, today, for the first time, we head out to Amarillo, where our guest is Tyler Topper. Tyler is a partner with Burdett, Morgan, Williamson, and Boykin, and focuses his practice on eminent domain and condemnation law and related areas to that. Tyler was an Amarillo Chamber of Commerce top 20 under 40 young professional. And since we were classmates, I can say with certainty that he is one of the kindest, best people I know. So with that as an introduction, let's hop in to our conversation with Tyler Topper on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Tyler Topper joins us today. And Tyler, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. Appreciate you giving up some of your day.
Yeah. Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me. Glad to do it.
Well, let's start off by talking about just how COVID-19 has been impacting you and your firm. We're recording this on the 14th of May. And so people listening to this now, things could have shifted and changed as this thing moves quickly, but that's when we were talking right now. So what's going on just within, especially right now, your firm, the staff, attorneys, kind of how are you all adapting to working in this environment? What's going on?
Well, that's a good question, and it seems to change from day to day a little bit, but right now we're allowing all of our staff and employees the option to work from home. Just for the foreseeable future. We've got lots of staff members and folks with small children, and childcare is an issue. School has been an issue, and those types of things. And so we're trying to make sure that our folks know that they can work from home. They don't have to feel like they've got to put their kids in daycare or something to come up to the office. And so that's probably the biggest change that we're experiencing right now. We've got some folks that are staying home. Others come to the office because they can and want to. And of course, they're doing the social distancing and all of those things. But yeah, it's been a pretty big change, really. And I've been working from home for, I don't know how many weeks now, 8 weeks or something.
Yeah, we were just talking about haircuts before. I know I got my first one this past Sunday when the first day it opened up, or second day maybe. You've kind of done a half of a job in between, right?
I let my sister-in-law get a hold of some clippers, and that was a mistake.
Well, I almost gave the clippers to my wife, but ultimately decided not to. So I hear you. What about your clients? How has it been in working with and communicating with them? What maybe new issues have come up that they've been needing your counsel and work for? Tell us about client interaction right now.
Well, that's a good question. It depends on the type of client. Most of our business clients, they're all dealing with their own, COVID-19 related business issues with PPP loans, changing company policies, all those types of things. So our employment lawyers And those folks have been really busy.
Sure.
And then some of the rest of us that, deal with maybe some less exciting issues, it really hasn't changed very much.
Yeah. Yeah. And within I know, this may be more for some of the other lawyers in your firm, but just the way that the local bar and courts have been operating, and all of that, how has that been going? Anything new recently with that?
Yes. The judges and the legal community here have done a pretty good job of trying to work together to find some solutions that work. Just like kind of all over the place, we're doing a lot of phone hearings, Zoom conference hearings, things like that. And so everybody's, they're doing their best to adjust, but we've got some good judges and some good folks kind of leading the way and trying to keep everybody really just communicating with everybody what the procedures are has been the biggest help right now. Sure.
No, that makes sense. Have you, you or others in your firm, has there been anything that you've learned from this or that have that's come out of this kind of the forced adaptation to the way we're working now that you expect or maybe even hope would stick with us after this is over? Or is this all just let's get back to normal as quickly as possible?
Well, that's a good question. I think, yeah, definitely there's some good things that are going to come out of this. Being able to work remotely, we've had that capability, at least at our firm, for a while, but people haven't really utilized it very much until now. And it's been nice to see that we're able to work remotely and still be productive. I think that's been a little bit of a surprise that we've maintained our productivity while being at home. And so I hope that sticks around. I wouldn't mind working from the house a couple days a week, if I could. So that's been good.
Yeah, no, I think that's for sure. I think, look, we were already as a workforce, not just in the law, but in the workforce, moving towards, what does it look like to do more remote working or flex working before COVID ever hit? And so we're kind of being forced into it now. And I think a lot of that will get sped up and accelerated now after this is over. So I think that there's some positives from that standpoint that could come from this. Well, let's transition out of that and just learn a little bit more about your firm and your practice. I gave a very brief intro before we got on the call here, but tell us about what you guys do and specifically your practice. I'd be interested to hear.
Well, sure. Yeah. Our firm, Burdett, Morgan, Williamson, and Boykin, we've been here in Amarillo for, 35 years or so, and we're really a full-service firm. We handle lots of business matters in particular. I think the only things we really don't do much of are criminal law and family law.
Right.
So myself personally, though, I primarily practice in eminent domain and then in administrative law. And so those are the two things that take up most of my time. I do a little bit of real estate work here and there too, but it's mostly eminent domain and administrative law. So
tell us a little more about that, because I think for people that maybe haven't spent much time with it, maybe recall it from a law school chapter or something. What does it look like to do eminent domain work in the administrative law setting? What sides of the issue are there, and what do you normally represent? Kind of tell us a little more about that specific practice area.
Well, sure. Yeah, I'll start with just the eminent domain work. I think it's really interesting work. I think I heard my property professor in law school mention eminent domain one time in passing.
Right. Yeah.
And little did I know that I'd make a career out of it. But, my firm, what I do is I represent landowners exclusively. So I don't represent the tech dots or the pipeline companies of the world. So exclusively represent landowners. And so, what happens when the government or somebody like a public utility company that's been authorized by the government needs to come in and build some new infrastructure for public purpose, public use? They've got to get the land to do that, whether it's a fee simple or a right of way. They've got to have that land. And so, most times we're able to help landowners, get a little bit better compensated than maybe what the pipeline company would like,
right,
or the utility company would like. And a big part of it too is, especially when you're dealing with easements for pipelines or say transmission lines, are negotiating the terms of that easement, because that easement's going to be there long after whatever compensation the landowner receives is long spent.
Yeah.
So it's a really fascinating practice area. It's a small bar that really handles those cases, and it's the same condemnors that you deal with time and again. So you really, after a few years, you start developing a number of relationships, and it's kind of a tight knit community.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. So do you have thoughts on the proposed high-speed rail issue? I'm sure I can't imagine a larger eminent domain issue that we have in the state on the horizon. That's at least, maybe it's one of those that's just popular to talk about, but in reality is not. I don't know, but for the practitioners like you, it may be just a shiny object. But any thoughts about that that you're at liberty to share?
Oh boy, that
deep
one,
breath. Here it comes.
Yeah, that one may have a long way to go. That's got some unique challenges.
Yeah.
I do know. I've talked to plenty of landowners that are in that. In the
Houston to Dallas. I should have. Yeah, Dallas, Houston, Dallas. I should have specified that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of people that have kind of been in that area, kind of along those routes that have been proposed, and it's people aren't going to be happy about it, and they may be forced to accept it at some point, but they're not going to go down without a fight. So.
I have no doubt. No doubt. Tell us a little more about just practicing law in Amarillo. This is kind of your opportunity to give the pitch for Amarillo, because I think I've been out there a number of times to just visit with you guys and others out there, and we've sent a lot of lawyers out there over the years and law students and all that. I think it's an area that if you've always lived in one of the major cities, or maybe you're from out of state, you just don't have that much familiarity with. Tell us about practicing law in Amarillo.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to sell Amarillo a little bit. I grew up out here in West Texas, kind of the Panhandle area, and so I knew what I was getting into after graduating law school and moving up to Amarillo. But it's a fantastic place. It's about 200,000 people, so it's bigger than a lot of people I think realize. The thing that really I think sets it apart for me, and the reason that I want to stay here, is just the people. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but truly the people here in this part of the world are some of the nicest, best people you're going to ever run across. And so, working here in a smaller legal community too, you have the opportunity to really build relationships with a lot of your colleagues and people that you're opposed to a lot in cases and things. And so it's really great. I think our bar treats each other with respect for the most part, and so it makes it more enjoyable than I think some of these larger legal communities where you can say whatever you want to somebody on the other side,
right,
because you're never going to see them again,
right.
But the other thing too about Amarillo is it's just a wonderful place to raise a family. It's family friendly. People have good values generally. It's just it's one of those places that I think once you spend a little time in a place that you can really appreciate.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think I have some similar sentiments about Waco, and it's similar in size too, and we kind of have some of the same, I think, structures and things in place like that. One thing I did want to have you speak to as well, because I know sometimes we tend to put West Texas in sort of one bucket, and recognizing that there is a difference between Midland and Odessa and Amarillo and Lubbock, and the small towns that are all in between all of those. What would you speak to in terms of just that's Amarillo specific, maybe, that makes it different than, say, if you're going to practice law in Midland or Lubbock or someplace like that?
Yeah, Dan, I think there are definitely some differences. Amarillo has a lot more, in my opinion anyway. It's got a real diverse economic base. There's a lot of different types of industries and types of things going on up here in the Panhandle that, when you go down to Midland, not to say that there's not lots of things going on, but oil and gas is so predominant.
Yeah,
in Midland, Odessa.
Sure.
Lubbock is, there's some, of course, Texas Tech is in Lubbock. You've got a lot of farming and things, agriculture around Lubbock too. Amarillo kind of has all that. We've got oil and gas up here. We've got agriculture, but not just farming. We've got ranching. We've got a couple of significant government employers. Bell Helicopter, Pantex is out there. Our city is kind of the regional hub for medical services. So we've got 3 hospitals here. So folks from really kind of the tri-state area, and by that I mean Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma, even up into Kansas, come to Amarillo, and that's kind of the economic hub for a pretty large area. Amarillo is right on I-40, so it's right in between Albuquerque and Oklahoma City. Yep. And so we've got a lot of diversity that's maybe not entirely lacking in Lubbock or Midland, but I think we've got more of that here. And then just on a personal note, I really enjoy Amarillo. We're up in the near the Canadian River. There's a lot of kind of canyony, hilly country with breaks and things in it. So once you get down to even to Plainview on the way to Lubbock, definitely by the time you're in Lubbock and Midland, Odessa, it is flat. If not for the irrigation desert type environment, Amarillo is a little different geographically than that.
No, absolutely. Well, great. Well, now I would switch gears a little bit, and as we talk to the young lawyers that are make up most of the audience here, what are some things that you learned as a young lawyer that have stayed with you, that are important in terms of the lawyer that you are today? What are a couple of things that you learned as a young lawyer that you'd want to pass on today?
I was really fortunate when I started working that I had the opportunity to work for 2 different partners that had very different strengths and weaknesses. And so, one of these partners was really just the master of attention to detail, but the other lawyer that I worked for was really good at dealing with the business side of being a lawyer. And so having the opportunity to learn the business side of the practice of law, which they can't really teach that in law school.
Right.
Learning the business side of things, but at the same time, every time I wanted to cut a corner, I couldn't because the other partner had such attention to detail. I think having that combination of mentors really helped me develop. Yeah. And that's something that I think was valuable for me.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think, speaking to that, the importance of, and sometimes you don't always get to choose necessarily, but once you're kind of into a firm or if it's a government, office, whatever, but finding the right people to get around you that can be your mentors, whether it's a formal relationship or not, but just that you can learn from is so important. And I think most everybody that shares something on here refers it back to someone that they got to practice under or learn from, or that was their mentor or whatever. And so important to intentionally seek out the best of the best when it comes to that. I mean, that seems like a pretty good way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if once you make it into a firm and you're working with the same people for a few months, it probably took me a little longer because I'm dense sometimes, but for most people, a few months, is enough to kind of figure out who's who and who's good at what, who you can really learn from, and what you can learn from them, and that type of thing.
Tyler, you've had the chance to work with a number of associates over the years and also participated in hiring them. On top of that, what are a couple of things or ways that a young lawyer can make a positive impression on the partners and others in the firm? And maybe on the flip side of that, what are a couple of negative things that they need to try to avoid?
Yeah, that's a great question. On the positive side, I think one of the biggest things for me is whether somebody's organized or not. I think that is something that translates into work product, and it just kind of gives you a little bit of a window into how somebody operates. So for me, being organized is a big way somebody can make a positive impression. I think the other thing too that comes to mind is when associates like clerks and people, first year attorneys especially, when they bring work back to the partner, bring it back finished or as close to finished as you can make it. And then if you're going to ask questions, ask specific questions that you need to finish the assignment. It's frustrating when somebody comes in and they want to talk through the whole project with you. And so, the best associates we've had are those that will come in. I've got 3 questions, bang, bang, bang. You answer those questions. They go back, finish it, whatever it is, and bring it to you. And it's, pretty usable.
Yeah.
I think some of the negative things, some things that lead to a negative impression, at least for me, is, if you've got somebody in there that you've just hired that's arrogant, so don't be arrogant. You don't know anything yet. I know you graduated law school, but you still don't know much. I still don't know much. And I've been out, 11 years. So, that's one thing. If you're unorganized, I already kind of harped on that a minute ago. But then, the other thing too that I think always stands out, this doesn't happen very much, but if somebody like a clerk or somebody is, you hear them talking negative about their other clerkships, having negative things about other employers and people they used to work for, to me, that's kind of a red flag because I don't want to be the next partner or law firm that, somebody's talking negatively about. So I think those are the main things that come to mind.
Yeah, no, those are good ones for sure. Unfortunately they come up quite a bit. And so I think that's wise to stay away from that stuff. So I mentioned earlier that you have participated for a while now with your firm in terms of hiring. Primarily up until now, I've been working with you more from hiring the law students on the clerkships and entry level folks, but most of our audience now are practicing lawyers, and so in terms of hiring laterals and things like that is a whole other thing potentially. But in any case, when you are hiring an associate lawyer, what are some of the things that you are looking for, particularly to start off with in the documents, resume, cover letters, writing samples, anything like that?
One of the first things that I notice, I don't necessarily look for it, but I notice when there are typos in cover letters. I had one person apply for I think it was a clerkship, and they'd clerked somewhere else here in Amarillo at a firm called Stockard, Johnston and Brown. And in their cover letter, they said that they had clerked for Stalker, Johnston and Brown. So I thought that was really funny. I went ahead and sent it to Mr. Stalker so I could give him a good rib about it. But anyway, typos always stand out. I think personalization, you can tell when somebody's really writing a cover letter that's personal to your firm and they've really looked into your firm and have some interest in it, as opposed to somebody that's just sending out the same cover letter to everybody and changing the names. That's a big thing. Yeah. For us here in Amarillo, I think ties, people that have ties to this area, that's always something that stands out. And of course, there's always the things that everybody looks at, that, GPA, law review, that type of thing, of course. Sure.
On the connection to Amarillo, or maybe more broad than that, West Texas, what's something that if someone doesn't have that tie or connection, what can they do to maybe overcome that concern that you might have that it's not going to be a long-term fit for them?
That's a great question. And certainly if somebody doesn't have ties to here, that does not mean that, we don't look at them. But I think it's a question that we do have, that we ask in interviews. And I think just, when you're actually able to sit down and interview somebody, you can get a better read on if somebody's really interested or not. If they're just applying to every law firm everywhere to find a job. If somebody answers the question, well, I'm just looking for a job, when you ask them, why do you want to come to Amarillo? That's probably not a very good sign. They might not last.
Right. By the way, bad answer, period. Everyone listening. I just want a job. No, bad answer.
But I think in the interview process, it comes out whether somebody's really interested or not, whether it's a genuine interest in the area or not. And, there isn't any magic answer, that we look for, but just kind of the general feel of the interview.
Sure. Speaking of interviews, as you get into interviewing someone, what are a couple of things that they can do to stand out positively or negatively in the interview?
I think for the positive side of things, I think just being really prepared, kind of like with your cover letter, make sure that you're prepared for this particular interview if you can be.
Yeah.
Know who's coming to interview you, kind of do a little bit of your research about those people. If somebody knows to ask me about skiing, they're already one step in the door, so, but I think that kind of goes along with just communication skills. When we're interviewing somebody's ability to communicate, for us, they don't have to have a 4.0 GPA necessarily, but you do want somebody that's able to communicate and converse with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did want to mention, since you brought up, knowing kind of who your interviewers are and maybe something about them. I know I've counseled quite a few law students and lawyers about this because the question either comes up or I kind of probe and find out about it. But, I think it's always appropriate. I don't know, you feel free to disagree or add on to this, Tyler, but I think it's always appropriate to ask the employer or the law firm who it is you're going to be interviewing with if you're the candidate. I think there's nothing at all wrong with asking that question. If they haven't provided that information to you, to ask that, because I think you're right. I think that extra level of preparation on knowing who you're speaking with is really helpful. And I think sometimes people are scared to ask that if it hasn't been provided. And the firm might say, look, hey, you're going to be talking to everybody. Or they might say, you're going to be talking to 10 at a time and all that and whatever. But I think oftentimes they just didn't think to include it in the email or in the packet that they send or whatever. And so they might just say, yeah, you're interviewing with Tyler and Paul. Okay, well, that makes it a lot simpler and I can focus in on those two. So anyway, that's just something I've been hearing more recently. So it's been on my mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I would agree with you. And certainly if I'm the employer and somebody's asking, well, who am I going to interview with? I think to me that shows that they're trying to get prepared and they're looking at it and they're thinking about it in advance. So I think that's good.
Right. Yeah. I don't think it's intrusive or inappropriate at all from the firm side. I don't think they would think that. Well, good. Well, as we're winding down our time here, and we do have some rapid fire questions to end with, but is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you would want to share with the lawyers in the audience?
I think that, one thing that gets overlooked a lot, and if there's just one thing that I would want to go back and I guess tell my past self is, prioritize, and I guess advice that I could give is just prioritize some time every day, at least every week, just to take care of yourself. I know it's a balance. It's a difficult balance for especially young lawyers, but you're going to burn out. You're going to get depressed or have anxiety or different things if you don't take care of yourself. And it's easy to put yourself at the back of the pack every day. But if you do that every day, then you're going to end up, in a bad spot. So I know that's kind of all encompassing, but take care of yourself. Make it a priority to take time for yourself too.
Yeah, no, I think it makes, it's important to know. I mean, last week's conversation, when I asked that question, it essentially was kind of the same answer, like mental health of the lawyer. And so that just tells me that it's something that is important and we need to be not casual about it or kind of, set it to the side or anything like that. And I think it goes way beyond. It has nothing to do with COVID or anything else. It's been going on for a long time in the profession. And so I'm glad that you raised it here again. We need to keep talking about it more. So thanks for doing that. All right. Rapid fires to end. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Name one trait or characteristic you most want to see in an associate.
Dependable.
Good. What habit has been key to your success?
Organization.
Favorite app or productivity tool?
Fortnite. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Was this the opposite day?
Yeah.
Or maybe that was for the next question. I don't know. Okay, we'll get to that. But sorry. Favorite app or tool?
This is nerdy, but Microsoft Excel. You got to love those spreadsheets.
Hey, the spreadsheets are great. All right. So favorite social distancing activity? Fortnite. Is that your answer? You just got on the wrong line.
Actually, I've never played Fortnite. I just know that's what the kids do.
What the kids are playing? Yeah.
It makes me feel old. But no, my favorite social distancing activity is probably running.
There you go. All right. Me and you, we're in that. Lastly, favorite legal movie?
A Few Good Men.
Nice. Classic. Love it. Good choice for sure. All right. Well, Tyler, thank you again for taking the time to be with us today. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. It's been fun. Thank you very much.
All right. My thanks again to Tyler Topper for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do a couple of things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And also, would you rate and review the podcast in either iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts? If you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could be of help to you in any way, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget, we have 2 searches going on right now. I mentioned one earlier. Both are in Dallas. We have a construction litigation associate position and the Hedrick Crane litigation associate. So if you're someone you know might have interest in either of those, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. You can also visit varsitysearch.com/lawyers for more information. All right. That's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.